Hello and welcome to the first episode of 40k Musings with me, Sean, from Tin Can Gaming Network. I've been away most of this week with work, which has got me back to thinking about something which has been pretty common through my gaming career, for want of a better description. And that is, how do you go about finding time for the hobby and keep yourself motivated? I consider myself a bit of a magpie in gaming terms, and I see something pretty new and shiny and that I don't have yet, and I want it. Now, I'm pretty sure that I'm not unique with this, but I certainly consider myself a magpie. As a result of this, I often end up with more things than I have time to give to them. So this could be painting armies for whatever game I want to play, or actually getting to play games themselves. So there's a bit of a balancing act really, but it's always a challenge because there's just not enough time to do it all. There's no real better example of this for me and my magpie behaviour than last weekend. And for those that listened to the last broadcast I did, I was up at a 40k event at Curtin Games just outside Exeter last Saturday, where after playing 4 games 40k through the day, I ended up walking away having bought into Star Wars Legion. They were offering a really great value bundle for Legion and Wave 1 of Legion, so one of everything. And yeah, before I had left the store, I'd ended up parting with some of the hard-earned, and now had Legion to add to the existing kind of diverse flock of games that are on my shelves. I mean, I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on Legion when it arrives, and it should land in the next couple of days. But I'd probably be lying to say that I'm excited to have another game system with armies to paint. I will get round to them at some point. When that is, nobody knows. But I suppose the simple answer to this is to have more willpower, and in all honesty, that would fix the problem. If I didn't buy new stuff, then I wouldn't end up with a backlog and everything would be rosy. But that's never going to happen, and I know I'm not the only one in that boat, and there are plenty of us in various hobbies who can't but help buy the new latest thing, and then we end up with this massive backlog of painting. I mean, when I first got back into 40k and 8th edition, it's probably around 5 or 6 months ago, I can't really remember how long it's been, I wasn't keen to repeat the mistakes which I feel I made when I used to be into miniatures games. And I used to play so many different miniatures games way back when. I've been playing them since I was about 11, so just started secondary school, and was consistently playing them through till about 32. So has about 20 years of playing games. And over that time, I accumulated a whole sea of unpainted models. I used to have multiple bookcases with all of them put out, and loads more in carry cases besides. And that was across a whole raft of game systems, different armies, different factions. But it was all a sea of grey, whether that was plastic or metal at the time. And it was really demotivating to have all of those models to paint. And in reality, it felt pretty impossible to achieve. At one point, I set myself the personal challenge for Warhammer Fantasy back then of getting my whole Empire army painted. And at that time I had, I think, 12,000 points of Empire, which is a lot of little human men that you need to paint. And I did manage it by painting day in, day out until like 2 AM in the morning, and I did get through it, but I didn't enjoy it. So I never got to paint much of the rest of my collection. So I think where I'm going, I've never been able to resist that new army, that new game, or even worse, the dreaded bargain, which you can't afford to miss. So when I dropped out of the hobby about 6 years ago, and at that time I was probably playing Warhammer Fantasy pretty exclusively, since before Age of Sigmar, I sold my whole collection, all my fantasy stuff, all my 40k, all the specialist game systems. I think I lost more money than I'd ever care to think about against what I paid for it. But at that time, it was the right thing to do. I wasn't using it, I wasn't enjoying it. And the other half at the time was not keen on me having a whole room full of toy soldiers, so it went. So on getting back into the hobby, I initially thought what a massive mistake I made by selling that whole collection. I wished I hadn't sold it all. But now, 5 or 6 months on, having been back into the hobby for a while, I've actually changed my thinking about it. Had I kept it all, I think I'd still have that demotivation that I had way back when, and I'd still have that sea of grey plastic, sea of grey metal, and it would be a real challenge to motivate myself to get painting again. And obviously too, when you come back to a game, you often don't want to start where you left off, so you want to pick something new to work on. So when I first started getting back into 8th, I was of the mindset of I will buy a unit, I will build it, and I'll paint it before I move on to the next one. I didn't quite do that when I started playing in 8th again, or getting back into 8th. But I did something pretty close, and I thought of a set of rules for myself to follow. And those rules were that I shouldn't have any more than one unit that's built and on the painting table. So one unit on the painting desk at any given time. I have to finish it before I even think about moving on to something else. So alongside that, it was I shouldn't have any other unit, or I should only have a maximum of one other unit or model built, primed and ready to go on to the painting table. So one on the table, one ready to go onto the table when that one's finished. And that's really about maintaining momentum in the painting. So if I finished that unit that was on the painting table, I didn't want to have nothing to paint straight after it. I wanted to keep the momentum going. And the other rule for myself was have no more than one unit or model in the box. So could have bought it, but you can't open the box because you've got too much to paint. So one unit on the painting table, one unit primed and ready to go on the painting table, and one that hasn't been assembled, it's still in the box, it's still in the blister wrap. So after a pretty painstaking think about what army I wanted to run in 8th edition, I was pretty keen to do something different. As I mentioned a minute or so ago, I didn't want to go back to play the same armies. And I've done a lot of armies before, and I think my first love of an army was for orcs, and it would have been really easy to go back. But I wanted to do something different. There's only so many times you can paint green. So where I settled was Genestealer Cults. A bit out of left field for me, but kind of like the models, thought they looked pretty cool and a bit different too. And when I was playing 40k, which was probably back in about 3rd edition, so a hell of a long time ago, they weren't really a thing back then, so they appealed to me, and that's where I went. I selected the Genestealer Cults as where I was going to go. So I went out and I bought my first unit, and I bought a box of neophytes with a chimera. Having now bought the index, that probably wasn't the best place to start, but it was a start nonetheless. So I started with that, and I've actually stuck to the rules that I read out a minute ago. And since the time of buying the neophytes, I've built them, painted them, bought the Brood Coven box, built it, painted it, bought some acolytes, or acolyte hybrids, and painted them. Bought a Goliath, built it, painted it, and I'm currently working on some acolytes, a unit of 10 of them. And I'm never a fan of painting in large batches, but I'm trying to push myself and trying to do it this time. So I have a looted, well, not a, I don't think it's called a looted Lehman Russ, that's the Orc player coming out in me. I have a Cult Lehman Russ that's on the shelf, and it's undercoated, and that will be next on the painting table. And in a blister box, I've got a Sentinel ready to go for when I've started working on the Russ. So I'm sticking to my rules. But with that said, and this is a big but, they haven't worked. And there's a very good reason why they haven't worked. Because getting into 8th edition, which I've watched loads of YouTube videos about and got a good grasp of the rules, I was excited to play it. But by building and painting an army in this way, it means that I didn't actually have an army that I could use. And most people want to play 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 points. 2,000 is the most common that I seem to come across. And it's going to take me a long time to build up to 2,000, especially if I'm not happy to have an army of grey plastic or primed plastic. So my rules worked to keep me building and painting, but it became frustrating because I couldn't actually play a game. So what I then did, as lots of people do, is turned to eBay and Facebook. Plenty of Facebook selling groups out there, and obviously eBay, you never know what you're going to get on eBay. Pro painted, that great description. So I wanted to play the game, and to do that I wanted a painted army as a stopgap whilst I painted up the Genestealer cult. I wasn't overly fussy about what army it was, because it was never intended to be a permanent addition. So my first port of call, or the first port of success really, was on a Facebook selling group, specifically for 40k. And there was an Eldar army on there, 90% painted, red and black scheme, and there were about 3,000 points of it. And it seemed to be a really good deal. It was a good price. It was around a third of the recommended retail. It was built. It was painted, mostly, to a fairly tabletop standard. I mean, it looked quite impressive from 10 feet away. When you get to a single foot away, distinctly less impressive. But it was built, it was painted, it was done to a reasonable standard. And the reason why painting is important to me is I really love going to events. Not for the competition, but an opportunity to meet new people, play games, and just have a bit of banter, have a bit of fun. So I bought the Eldar army. I got a really good deal on it. It was just before Christmas, if memory serves, probably end of November. So somebody wanted the money for Christmas presents. So I got a great deal. And I snapped it up and had some distinct encouragement from one of my friends that it was a good thing to do and I should just buy it at that point. So me of 0 willpower certainly did. So I bought the Eldar army. But it didn't stop there, and I should know what I'm like. My eBay search was still live, and I think it was probably less than a week after receiving that bargain of an Eldar army that I came across a Raven Guard army that was on eBay, and because I ended up getting up fairly early most days, this was 6 o'clock in the morning, the listing had been up for about 2 hours. And again, it was a fantastic bargain, or it appeared to be, all painted to a tabletop standard. About £700 at retail for £160, and it was on Buy It Now. So I couldn't help myself but clicking that Buy It Now button. I told you, I'm hopeless with willpower. So, and you're probably starting to get back to that whole magpie description. And I think all I can say is the sickness is real. The willpower sickness is definitely real. The addiction to the plastic crack is real. Since buying that Raven Guard army, and the painting, again, a bit like the Eldar, it's fine from 12 feet away. You get to a foot away and it's distinctly less good. So it is what it is. It was still a great deal for what I got. But I've been fairly good since buying it. And although I haven't been able to resist adding to them, I'm doing a gradual repaint of the whole army. So whilst trying to progress the Gene Stealer card, I've now sidelined slightly into doing a repaint of the Raven Guard as well at the same time. But with all that said, I've been pressing ahead with the cult, and I feel like I've still got a really good motivation to complete them. And actually adding in completely different units, so something like a Raven Guard unit of 5 Hellblasters, for example, having that difference has made a difference to the motivation, because it's not all the same. It's different, or it's enough different. So part of the way I've maintained this momentum as well, because I really never used to enjoy painting, is by attempting to paint for an hour each day. And typically I do this before work. So early in the morning, wife's gone to work, so I have in my head that I'm going to do an hour's painting before I go to work. And I seem to manage this about 90% of the time. So if I don't get to paint on a day off, which I pretty regularly don't get to paint on a day off, I'm still getting 4 or 5 hours of painting in each week. And as a result of that, I'm making progress every week. It may not be big progress, because I'm not a fast painter. I'm not even a brilliant painter. I'm not even a good painter. I am making progress, and that in itself is motivating in its own way. And I have that hour embedded in my mind, so I hardly have to think about the fact that I'm going to do it. I just automatically come and do it. So I think some advice that I could give anybody is, if you can find some time each day, even if it's 15 minutes or half an hour, the benefits of it do add up, and they do become meaningful over time. So at the moment I'm making really consistent progress through the cult. Not fast, never going to be fast, it's not my style, but it's definite progress. And as a result of doing it, I'm actually enjoying painting. And something I never thought I'd say. I mean, I really didn't like painting. I mean, painting 12,000 points of Empire years and years ago probably killed that off in me. And maybe sometime next year, 2019, I'll have the Gene Stealer cult army finished. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying playing the Raven Guard and the Eldar, and I don't intend to put the Gene Stealer cult on a table until they're finished. I don't want to play them piecemeal. I'm working up to 2,000 points, and that's what I want to play. I have no idea of what that's going to look like, and I can talk about that in another video. But at the moment, I'm really enjoying playing the Raven Guard and the Eldar. They're different, and they're both enjoyable. I still intend to move certainly the Eldar on as soon as the Gene Stealer cult are finished, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So what advice would you have for me in terms of developing painting, motivation, speeding up, and how do you keep motivated when you're doing your hobby progress, you're building your painting? How do you keep yourself going? My next 40k event is a doubles event. It's up at Curtain Games again in late April. I'm not sure whether they've still got tickets left, but can only recommend their events. I'm really excited to be back up there again, and I was hoping to be up there this weekend, which is weekend of the 24th of March, but unfortunately work got in the way. I was hoping to be up there for their Armada event today. But for the 40k event, Greg and I are going up, and we're running 2 1,000 point Marine lists as our doubles list. It'll be my Raven Guard again, and they'll be alongside his Crimson Fists. Not quite sure what chapter tactic he's going to use for his Crimson Fists, because there isn't an official one at the moment. We don't expect to be taking any titles, but we'll definitely have a blast while we're up there. So thank you for listening to me again, and hopefully I will speak to you all again next weekend with another update. Let me know if there's anything you'd like me to chat about, and I'll make sure it comes in a video in the future. But otherwise, have a great week, and speak to you again.